know, it's amazing to see what they could and what they could do with less. You know, like even your fall, like you showed that club today, that 5-iron,
the
ball is bigger than the club. You know.
You know, it's and talking real quick on this old-fashioned club that I carry in my bag and I use when I'm teaching lessons. You know, people underestimate the tools that are available around us to become better at golf. And yes, of course, there's a lot of things that you can buy that are very worthwhile. But go grab let's see, this is 50 years old. So go grab a 50-year-old iron.
Yep.
And perfect being able to hit it pure time and time again, and watch what happens to the rest of your game with your normal club.
It's like cheating, isn't it? Once you get to
it feels like cheating. And once you can hit something like this pure and just absolutely just 10 balls in a row, just nice and pure, go ahead and grab your own 5-iron and hit the next 10 balls with that. And just watch what happens in that short period of time to the way your body naturally moves through the ball and gets all of the pace on that golf ball.
Yep. That's a great point. You know, when you put that 5-iron up, it's your dad. What was cool is I actually said Billy Casper on it, which is, hey, that's pretty cool. But the ball's bigger than the face. You know,
absolutely.
Those guys are going out. What's so cool is they were so good. Not good would be really a silly word to use. They're like samurais. They could just, you know, they were always on point. They had to be. You couldn't play this stuff they played. The ball was not very good. Not very good, terrible, and compared to now.
Yeah.
And then you had these persimmon heads that, you know, a driver now looks like there's not even a hybrid that looks like yeah. And so I still, and I know, I'm sure you and I, we're so much alike. We haven't even talked about this, but sometimes I'll bring, if I've got a pretty good player out and it's really getting a pretty good go of it and doing the right things, I'll just pull out this old driver that I have that I don't think anybody's really ever hit it very well. And just a persimmon head, I know I haven't. I don't think I've ever hit a good shot with it yet. But so it's kind of it's fun in a way because it brings you down a little bit. And then, of course, when you get your other equipment back, you get back on the car. But it's a little bitty old thing, and it doesn't. It probably has it looks like 6 degrees aloft. It's like this, and you tee it up, and it just goes right. You know, I don't care who hits it.
Yep.
I've had the big boys slap at it, and everybody laughs because it's just kind of a low slice. And we have fun with it because we don't have to play with it. You know, it's not where we're going to have to tee it up with. Those dudes were playing with things like that, and they'd figure out how to make a crappy club like that work out, you know?
You know what? If you look at guys like Johnny Miller or Jack Nicklaus, and you look at those little heads that they used to use, you have to remember those guys were bombing the ball with little heads like this, and they were still hitting the ball 280 all day long. Sometimes, well over 300. And I find it remarkable. In fact, I'll show you one of my little secret tools.
Yeah.
Everybody's heard of the orange whip.
You do your thing. I'm coming in just so I can see, okay?
Yeah. So everybody talks about, the orange whip and these other teaching clubs.
Yeah.
But a few years ago when I was with Golf Tech, one of my golf pros, Barry Shank, and his father made a really interesting tool that was literally made with a surveyor stick. You can see the flex in that.
Yeah.
And was made with a very small driver head. And the interesting thing about this is that it has more whip in it than anything you've ever swung in your life. But in order to control it and to gain speed through your shot, this thing is like worth its weight in gold, probably platinum, because it teaches you how to move your body through the shot. It teaches you the timing and the balance that you need. So when we get together, you and I will have a little driving contest and see who can hit this sucker the farthest. Because
I think you'll win right now.
most people can't even get it off the tee. And I've seen two pro friends of mine hit this thing 280 plus, believe it or not.
Wow. And that, I see how much flex is in that. That's what I love is that flexion right up in the top end of the club. You know, it's
Yep.
bending up here in the higher part of the handle. And I love that too. That's pretty cool.
You know, I just like little tools that make a big difference, that allow you, because, you know, one of the things that I've had issues with a few of my students is that sometimes you get students that can't feel what they're doing. They can't feel where their hands are at the top. They can't feel what their impact position is or whether their hips are turning or not. And so by forcing them to use a tool like that, it forces their body into the right position. And you do that enough times, and that's going to give the muscle memory that you need in order to really help you create the muscle memory needed for a good solid swing.
What I love about it is you see so many players, and I'm going to give you what you would see, I would think, and what I see, the bad version, being that, you know, that they just don't know what they're doing sometimes. They just go up and then just come straight down like this, and there's no, you know, there's nothing. And then you get a tool like that. What I like about that is they swing it. They finally feel this little. Because this, as you know, I know you know this. But it's just so stiff. They don't know what to do. They have no idea what they're doing. So they just kind of go up and down, and that usually doesn't work out. You have to manually. I think David was doing a really good job the other day of talking about how there's a change of direction. There can be a lot of debate even when you get into all that stuff. But I will say this is I don't think there's debate of this is. I'd rather see somebody moving this way than I would this way, you know, or.
Well, yeah. I mean, the two biggest problems. Yeah, the two biggest problems that we have with amateur golfers is, you know, the tendency to lift it straight up, the tendency to cast it, and the third problem would be the tendency to let your hands go far too early. And I think if you really looked at it, those three issues probably take up 80% of the problems that golfers have when it comes to just having a nice, smooth, easy swing. I recently watched a Ben Hogan video that I'm sure everybody has seen. If you haven't seen it, go onto YouTube and search it out because it's amazing. And it's only about 3 minutes long, but it specifically talks, and Hogan talks about the fact that the golf swing is really in your shoulders all the way to the top. But once you get to the top, the rest of the golf swing is in your hips and your lower body. And to me, that just makes so much sense. That if you turn your lower body from the top of your swing down, your hands are going to follow. Absolutely, 100%.
Yep.
And so, you know, I think mechanical things are very important, especially in today's world. But I think a lot of pros make the mistake of trying to be too mechanical or just too feel when they should be a good combination of both.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. I believe that's 100% correct with what I teach as well, because the fact, like you said, you run into players where, you know, you see them, sometimes they're pushing maybe a little too hard, and they're trying to, you know, if you listen to them talk, maybe they're telling us a lot of times before they're even doing it. Like, and I know you've heard this, but, you know, you're a player, I'm going to go grind, I'm going to go get this, I'm going to go stack a bunch of balls this high, you know, and maybe it's better to think with your right here before you do all this crazy nonsense, you know, in my opinion.
I would, you know, I think most people, I wouldn't say most, but I would say a good 50% of golfers don't realize that going and buying that bucket of 100 or 200 balls and going through them in half an hour is just not what they should be doing. I try to promote, maybe go grab a bucket of 50 and take enough time over every shot that it takes you 45 minutes to go through those 50 balls. And it's not just hitting until you finally get one right. It's making sure that every shot has that feel, has that right movement. That's how you get good at golf. And you know, that's kind of one of the questions that we had was, you know, the need for educating with our amateurs and with the pros that we work with. And, you know, everybody does it. You know, myself, I'm old enough now at 50 to where I know what my issues are. I know if I'm going to miss a green, it's going to be to the right. I know that if I'm going to miss a fairway, it's going to be to the right. There's little things that I know if I don't get my hands turned at impact that I'm going to have a little bit of what I call a baby fade, rather than that straight penetrating shot that I really always try to go for. And so, yeah, as you get older and as you play enough golf, you start to learn how to make these little changes that can actually help you tremendously. But that's why they need to talk to, you know, a pro, go to their local club, talk to a PGA professional, talk to, you know, one of your friends that happens to be a scratch player. Too many people are getting lessons from guys that are 10 and 15 handicappers, when my opinion is if you're not going to listen to a golf pro, you should only listen to your friends if they are literally 4 or 5 handicaps or below, because they understand what it takes to be that good of a golfer, and they're not going to give you something to do that's going to hurt your game.
I love that, because I try to say that a lot is, and also don't be afraid to put your money up and get beat, because I did a seminar one time. It was a seminar. It was in Austin, and I had a gentleman came, I had 2 guys guest. One was Wesley Short, and then we had what was his name, Matthew Nutting, and he worked with a lot of. He was a European mental coach and so forth.
Yeah.
And great, very, very knowledgeable and everything. But you know, we kind of come to the end of this thing, and we had a great go of it, and we got all these parents in there, and these are all my. Most of these are all my students. And I said, if you really want to get good, you know, you just need to gamble. And boy, I got hammered. At the end of the night, I had some people in there that sit in the church on the front row there that gave me a pretty good go of it. Said, hey, we don't teach gambling. That's not. I said, you know, if you listen to what I said, like Harvey Pink said, it could be for a Snickers bar, it could be for a Coca-Cola, it could
exactly.
be to mow your yard. Like if I lose, I have to mow your yard. I had a deal like that one time, and that was probably the most nervous I've ever been in my life. And I played really well, you know. And you know, just something, because you know, if you just go out and don't play for something, like you just said, you go out and hit these big range balls. What are you going to get penalized for? If I hit one and there's a big old ditch over here, right here, and if I slap one out in it, that doesn't hurt me. But if I go on the first tee with my boys over here and I slap one in the ditch, I've got problems. You know, they're going to rib me. And that's a good thing too, because then you got to deal with that headache, this little stress your boys are giving you, and you're going to lose money. And then you start, what I call, you kind of have to start throwing from the hip. You know, little John Wayne, you start throwing from the hip, and to fight, 100%. You have to fight. At a certain point, you have to start fighting. You don't play golf anymore. You just you scramble, you fight, whatever you want to call it, to get out of this crappy mess we all create. You know.
And that's the beauty of the game of golf, is that we create the mess, but we also create the outlets to get out of the mess.
Yes.
You know, and tell me, you know, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things that are rewarding in the game of golf, and I won't say this is the most important, but I will say that this is one of the more important things that I think are about the game of golf, is that you have the option, obviously, to have a bogey or double bogey. You also have the same option by playing smart golf to have a par or a birdie. And when you really start to become a good player, you'll notice little things about your game changing. One of those things that you'll notice is that having 1 or 2 bogeys on the front 9 doesn't kill your entire round. And, you know, I can remember very clearly how being younger and, you know, I'll say one story. I was playing in a golf tournament, the same tournament that Tony Finau was playing in about 5 years ago, actually about 6 years ago, and maybe longer, maybe even 8 years ago. And I got to hole number 6 or 7, and I was playing great. I think 3 under, and it was awesome. And then all of a sudden, one of the sponsors had a big giant inflatable cow I won't say the sponsor, but think of who the fast food sponsor is that has a big giant inflatable cow.
I think I got it figured out.
Yeah, and I hit a smoke and drive down this par four, very long par four, mind you, about 560 yards or so. And man, I caught the cow in the mouth. It bounced off the cow and went straight out of bounds. And I had to go back to the tee box, hit another shot, ended up double bogeying the hole. And by the time I finished the round, my 3 under through 6 holes turned into a 76, 5 over. And I literally, my girlfriend at the time didn't want to even talk to me. I was so disgusted with myself, all because of this dang cow.
Man, I can't yeah. You and a kid,
and so you start, if you want to understand golf yourself, what I did was I was able to take that and use that as ammunition to create a feeling in a situation where getting a double wasn't going to be the end of the world. Where getting a double was literally meant that I just had to get 2 more birdies than I'd planned on.
Yeah.
And I think that mindset is something that can be taught. I think it's something that some people are born with, but I think it is something that can be taught, and that is to not let a few bad holes ruin the entire 18.
No, that's 100% true. It's a funny story I'll go into, and I'll try to make it short. But when you were telling that story, I was laughing, not at you, because I was sitting there going in my mind, it was very similar. It was different, but similar. There was we used to play. There was a mini tour event I was playing in, and I was really playing well. My brother was caddying for me, and we haven't talked about this, but I know you got some good friends that are Navy SEALs, and my brother, he was a Navy SEALs on SEAL Team 8, trained out in Buds and did all that. And he was in Virginia Beach and etc. But he was a terrible golfer. That's a funny story of its own, but he's a wonderful human being. And anyway, he's caddying for me, and I get up there, and I'm on the 16th hole, and I'm winning this tournament. It's done. It's over. The tournament's over. Yeah. I've got these boys down and out. I'm going to close this thing out. It's a 2-day event, so it's not like it's in the Masters we're talking about. But I got these boys down and out.
Still competitive.
First time, and I get up there and I hit a 3-wood. I'm trying to be somewhat play the game the right way. And they had these big boulders out there for in the fairway for they're about this big for 100 and 150 yards. I never even noticed them. Well, I hit one of them, and it went into a ditch. And my brother, because I can't see probably. No, I still can't. I don't have very good eyes. And I shouldn't tell that for being a golf instructor, but I really don't. But he goes, "You're not going to believe this." And I went, "What do you mean?" He goes, "We're walking down there." He goes, "I'm telling you where that ball's at. It's in that creek right there." And I went, "Oh, you got to be shitting me." And I walk up there, and sure enough, 100%, 100%, I walk over there, and I hit this 3-wood, doing the right thing, right time. I'm trying to and I made a good pass at the ball, and I did this, and I went, "How could this happen?" And then I lost my mind. I only had, how do you lose your mind? You only got 2.5 holes left, and I lost it, and I ended up losing the tournament. And because I didn't come back to the course, what I should have done was, I was pretty young at the time, should have separated myself from all this nonsense, and he was somebody who could obviously do that because he was a SEAL, but I wasn't prepared at that time for that, and I made some mistakes coming in because I was just mad. And I learned that doesn't really work out real well for you, when you hit a dunk, when you hit a shot and it doesn't, and say everything was right about it. But when I came back, I was still mad for every shot until I finished that round, and I realized how stupid was that, being mad every shot, because it cost me a tournament. At least it cost me a chance to. I might not have won that tournament because of where my ball went. I might have had a chance for a playoff, but I ended up I took her off the rails from there. I kind of lost my little noggin.
I wish I had no experience to understand and empathize with you, but I have lots of experience to empathize with you. So I totally understand it. But it brings up a very valid point. I don't know how you conquered that yourself, but I know that I conquered it with routine. And I kid you not, I'll tell you a story that happened in about 1986, 87. I was caddying for my dad at the Vantage Club in Palm Springs. And it was a fairly big tournament. And we were on the final day, and he really, really was close. Don't know if he was leading or not, but he really felt that he had a chance to win the tournament. And we got to, I think it was 16 or 17, and he had put the ball in the bunker. And so naturally, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to save him some time. And I grabbed his 56. Back then, we called it a sand wedge. And I went and handed it to him. And he looks at me, and he goes, I kid you not, he takes the wedge, walks back to the golf bag, puts the wedge back in the golf bag, looks at the shot, then walks back to his golf bag, picks up the same wedge, and goes and proceeds to hit the ball and get up and down. And as I was conquering this myself, I started thinking, that's so interesting that he didn't want it handed to him because he hadn't made the decision on what club he was going to use and what shot he was going to hit. So he actually went back to basics, took the club from me, put it back in his bag, and then started the entire routine over again. And I think that speaks volumes as to how they coped with situations like my big giant inflatable cow story and your ball in the creek story.
Yeah, they do, and they're different, and that's why they were different in many ways. And my phone may run loose on us. Are you all right there? Yeah, you're okay. Cool. I want to go over. I think we missed some of the footage at first about your father. I'd like to get mine in there as well. And before we wrap it up tonight,
Okay.
when I started recording, I think we missed a little bit, but. If you want to talk about, and when I'm saying talk, you talk about whatever you want, but I'm just saying how he was as a family man and so forth. We missed some of that from earlier, and I apologize.
Yeah, no worries at all. My father was really blessed that he never really changed. He was the same kid from Chula Vista when he was a child as he was as an older man and all the way through his career. The one thing that was always so important to my dad was family. And my mom. And if we weren't on a golf course somewhere with our dad, we were on a fishing boat. Those two things came hand in hand in our family. And to this day, I'm a golf pro who loves to fish. And I know that's very stereotypical. I think all of us golfers like to fish, or most of us do. But for me, I have no memories of not wanting to be around my dad because he was there. And again, when you're traveling 30 weeks of the year on the professional tour, to be able to make sure that your kids always know that you're there for them, that's huge. And again, it's something that I'm always will be and very grateful for to this day. He was just a good guy, and he was a great golfer, but he was really a great man and a great role model. Not just for me, his son, and my siblings, but for a lot of people in the golf world.
And I was talking, again, I apologize for missing some of this earlier. I don't think this will be our last go of it. I'd love to have you here in Texas or come up to Utah. I don't care.
I may have to make a trip down, or you can come up. Exactly.
Yeah, I see that happening. I think I contacted you a year or two ago about. I'd love to come up and learn about what you're doing, and your knowledge, and you're probably in a. I know there's so many people, like even when we posted this thing about that you're coming on the show, you had so many people that popped up and said the apple didn't fall far from the tree, and it also that you just I know you're brilliant. How can you not be with having somebody in your family that did what your father did with the game, but more importantly, he was a family man and taught you skills that are far more important than I believe golf. From what it sounds like to me.
That's exactly it. He taught me. Yeah, he taught me. That's the beauty of what I get to pass on to my students, um, and friends and people that I work with is, um, one of the greatest compliments I get is that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. You couldn't say anything more to get me goosebumped up, because I love that. He was my hero. Of course, I want to be as much like him as possible. Um,
Yep.
but one of the ways that I know that I'm a lot like him is with relationships and with caring about people, and that really does transcend to your students. Your students absolutely know whether you're just trying to get them through a quick half hour or hour lesson, or whether you actually really care and have a vested interest in how they perform.
Yep.
I have a lot of students that still to this day contact me, and they'll send me a text or a message, um, saying, "Hey, I broke 80 for the first time," and I love being the cheerleader. I always make the joke, I'm not going to put on a skirt and wear pom poms, um, but I'll be your biggest cheerleader if you want to dedicate some time to being a better golfer. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, that was one of the cool things that I thought when you were talking about it as well, is like, how much passion you have for your students. And I think if your dad, and I can't speak for him and don't want to, but I believe that he would have been the same way if that's what he did. If that's what, if let's just say that he wasn't a 51 time. I believe, he was just, it seemed from what I gathered. I think a lot of times you can look at footage and look at the genuine.
Yeah.
If you look at body language, and I'm not an expert at all that stuff, I wouldn't even know where to go with all that. But he just looked like a nice person, and when everybody
He
says
was.
you're a nice person, the odds are you're pretty nice person. He reminds me a lot of my father. Like I said, my father's not it's not we're not talking out, we're not talking about golf, but a human being. You're not going to find anybody that's better. He was always there for me, and he and I still to this day have, he's still here, but
Great.
he's and I'm very lucky to have him. But it's very, very, very lucky to have him. But he and I are very close, and if it wouldn't have been for him to throw me out there when I was a little bitty boy, say, hey, take this little stick and ball and slam it around and see what happens. I wouldn't be here, And
I think that's great, and I hope one of the things that as I hear you talking about, one of the things that I think is that I'm sure knowing you that you've already told them that, but always make sure that we tell our parents what we think. I'm in a very fortunate position with my dad. At the very end of his life, there weren't very many secrets between us. And in fact, I don't think there were any. And because we worked together, we had the opportunity to be close in a different way. And so when he passed away, I didn't have any regrets. And I think that that's a really big deal for a child, to make sure that there aren't any regrets. If you want to do something, do it now while your parents are still alive. Matt, I'm not sure if this is still running, but I'll go ahead and end on a couple of business notes, and that is, you're going to see some links that I have sent through. One to my webpage, another one to the webpage that my father and I did together for the golf schools, and also to a company called membersiq.com. Which is a company that is doing some really incredible stuff in the golf world right now, specifically working with clubs that can make it, they make it much easier for clubs to not only retain their membership, but also communicate with their members and communicate in real quality ways so that nobody ever gets left behind or forgotten about. Again, dealing with the relationships that I had with my father and how important relationships were for him and for me, this is a great company, because anything that helps make relationships and good relationships easier seems like a great idea to me. So with that being said, Matt, it was great to be on the show, and really, truly a pleasure. I hope to be able to do it again. I would love to talk more golf and more stories about Dad and some of these other greats that I had the experience to be around. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Have a great night and happy golfing.